Hey guys, it's Holly. So a couple of months ago, I ordered myself a giant 3D version of myself, of my sig fig, because I'm incredibly self-centered and I just had no, seriously, I saw these on Instagram a while ago, and this one was by an account called 3D Encounter, and I saw these and I really wanted one. Like, I had my sig fig, I drew it up, and I just thought it was the coolest thing ever, and I absolutely love it, and she sits on my bedside. And then a couple of days ago, I saw a brand new one, and it was a different account this time, and they posted this giant Galactus. And as soon as I placed this order, of course, like the ones that come to mind is I'm like, I want a giant Galactus, I want a giant man, I want just like any giant version. Admittedly, I did want a giant like Minecraft dog so I can make my Minecraft dog, and even just like a Grogu or like any of my favorites. Honestly, I would make like a giant one of myself in like a Christmas jumper or something. It's incredible. And I saw this Galactus and it looked incredible, and I had a look down their page as well, and I saw that they had a giant man, so I sent them a message and I was like, hey, how much for these figures? Now, keep in mind, these are custom-made 3D printed maxi figures. They are expensive. 3D printing takes a lot of time. You have to pay for the materials, you have to pay for the person's time. I knew these were gonna be expensive. So long story short, I bought another maxi fig, and this time it is of Ant-Man, and this thing is sick. So this maxi figure is done by an account called Maxifigures on Instagram, and he made this a while ago, and Galactus is currently being revamped, so I wasn't able to get him, but fingers crossed I can get him in the future. But I was able to get my hands on this giant man, and I was quite hesitant for a bit because I was like, is it really worth spending the money on this? I think in total he was $215 for me to get, and luckily this guy was in Australia, otherwise shipping would have cost me an arm and a leg. But I just knew that he would fit into my Marvel display so well. Like, this is an actual character, we haven't gotten a buildable version, and he just looks incredibly slick. He doesn't sort of have all of the bricks inbuilt. Like, this is literally giant minifigure parts, so I had to. I also have a little custom tag saying thank you for the support with a little Ant-Man, and even like his little custom logo is on the back of the legs. I'll show you guys up close and everything and give you all a big size comparison and really talk through the figure, but basically just straight off the bat, he's bigger than my other one of me, which is incredible, and I love him. So let's go have a look at him. So here is Ant-Man. I've sort of decked him out with a bunch of figures in order to make it look like the airport battle, and this thing is absolutely incredible, and I really just hope this gives you a better sense of scale and sort of what you can do with a figure like this. But let me just sort of shrink it back down a tiny bit just to give you a better idea of how big this thing actually is real quick. So at a more sort of grounded level, you can really see that this thing stands massively, massively, massively tall. I really hope that Spider-Man on the helmet can sort of give you just that sense of scale, but I will compare it to some other things in a second. But before we do, I really want to have a look and show you guys how this figure actually works, all of the different printing, all of the different pieces, and how much sort of articulation there is. So here is Ant-Man without any of the figures, and I've really had to move him quite far back because he is incredibly tall. This is taller than the original sort of sig fig version of a 3D figure that I currently have. He's also taller than the buildable Harry and Hermione that released earlier this year. In fact, the creator Maxifigures says that they usually stand around 12 inches tall, and it all depends on sort of their head, whereas Ant-Man sort of has just a regular sort of helmet. I feel like this would be roughly 13 inches, roughly 30 centimeters. And the figure is designed in order to just look like as close to the Lego figure as possible. So all of the printing is based upon the figure from the Ant-Man and the Wasp set, and then the helmet is the one from the Avengers Endgame sets, being the War Machine mech. So technically this figure combination doesn't exactly exist, but all of these parts are real. Even his face is the good old Peter Parker head that just sort of looks like that, and then you can slot this piece on. So starting off on his legs, you can see the intricate detail on here. It is really, really nicely done. There's a few lines that just have a tiny bit of bleeding on them, but it's nothing major. It's nothing you'd see from a bit far away. I love the way that the texturing and stuff is done on the sides. I think the legs look absolutely incredible, and I love the hip printing as well. This is incredibly detailed. You can sort of see his hands to make that gunmetal. It's got like a slight speckled pattern to it. There's like specks of like silver or white in there in order to sort of give it that sheen, and that is included on both the hands and the helmet. I think it looks really nice. As I zoom in on the hand, you can sort of see the filament texturing a bit better. You can see all of those tiny specks of silver, and it did look a bit weird at first, but it's really grown on me. And also, if I just sort of pull on the hand a bit, you can see that it actually does detach and you get full mobility. I really don't want to make the joints super loose, but you can see that it fully rotates here. Same with the arm, you have full articulation, but the more you move it, the looser it gets and can't really sort of hold its position as well. As you can see, it does sort of do it at the moment. Taking a look at the torso, and that same texturing pattern comes up here on it, and it looks incredibly slick. I can't tell if it's painted or if it's sort of like printed and stickered. It doesn't feel like a sticker or anything like that. Like, I'm pretty sure it's completely stuck on there. It really it looks incredible. It's so accurate and well done, and I absolutely love it as well. You can see the belt printing, and that silver does sort of have a bit of a shine again to it, which I really feel like that one definitely has to be paint just by how it does have that little shine to it, and it just looks so close as well to Lego's colors. I'm a huge fan. When you spin him around as well, he does have back printing, which is something that my original Sigfig didn't. Then again, I didn't have a pattern to submit for back printing, whereas Ant-Man naturally comes with it. It looks like there's been a tiny bit of paint taken off here on the left, but nothing too major. I'm not bothered by it at all. And there is, again, some incredible back detailing that looks exactly like the minifigure. I really like it. You can see that that silver still has the same shine, and this gray is more of a sort of matted gray. It's nothing too special here, but it's so nice. So nice. One of my favorite parts though has to be this Ant-Man helmet. Now, to be honest, in terms of like an actual minifigure helmet, I quite preferred the one that came in the Quantum Realm Explorer set. I wasn't a huge fan of this slick helmet, and that's purely because in actual Lego form, I liked being able to see Scott Lang's eyes, but on this Maxifigure, I think it works a lot better, and in terms of accuracy to the film, I think it's definitely a lot closer, and this just looks incredible. Again, it's using that same material as the hands all the way around, has that spec. You can see that it naturally as well, because it is a 3D printed figure using 3D filament, it does have that same sort of Lego shine on it, which is pretty cool. The printing on the helmet too is really slick. You can see sort of all of that detailing. You can see the metallic even on the eyes as I sort of rotate him round and shine. Even the silver bits here, all of the intricate detail around the mouth. And then, like I said, when you pop off the helmet, he actually has a face print. And the face print really is the only sort of criticism I have about this figure. I think it still looks really good, but it just looks a bit giant. I don't know if you guys still feel the same. The scaling sort of looks a bit off. Just like the legs, there's a tiny bit of bleeding on this eyebrow here, and admittedly the top of it isn't quite as smooth as the minifigure I have of myself. You can sort of see all of the printing lines a bit better, which isn't amazing, but with a figure like this where you're just going to keep their helmet on the entire time, I really couldn't care less. It's all covered, and the helmet itself looks incredibly slick. Even looking at the top there, it all comes together at one really nice peak. And just like a regular minifigure, you have full articulation, although considering this one has leg printing, I wouldn't want to move it up too much just so that I don't rub off the printing, but you can pose his legs if you really want to. These ones currently at the moment are quite stiff, and honestly, I really want to keep it that way. So let's compare him to some other objects just so that you can get a sense of scale. So the first thing for comparison is the buildable Hermione. I feel like this is sort of the most accurate version you could get, and I know when these came out, the first thing I sort of thought of was having a giant man version of this and having a Galactus. I mean, same deal with these 3D figures, and I feel like that's why you'd go and buy these. Exactly, that's why I went and bought one of these in the first place. Now, admittedly, these brick ones are a lot cheaper. You could buy Harry and Hermione for less than the price of this 3D figure, but again, it's all brick built, which you personally might prefer. I feel like because it is made out of bricks, the proportions are a bit more off. Her legs look a tiny bit more stumpy. Same with the torso, just a tiny weeny bit. I think the head works really well, especially on Harry, but yeah, it's just a tiny bit shorter, and I feel like, again, the proportions aren't quite there. So there they are side by side. You can see that there is quite a considerate difference between the two of them, but it's not that big. So let's have a look at him up against some figures. What better way to show off Giant Man's scale next to minifigures than including as much as Team Cap as I have. And as you can see, Captain America sort of just ends up right where the printing of his leg starts. I've also got Wanda with all of her pieces from the Endgame final battle so that you can sort of just get a sense of how big this thing is. And honestly, when I compared it to shots of Civil War and sort of putting Spider-Man on top of his helmet, it looks incredibly close to scale. I don't think it's exact, but it is incredibly close. This thing is giant. You'd need blue tack in order to sort of hold a minifigure, but you can sort of stick them on the top of the arm if you really wanted to, or on his wrist like that and make it look like he's holding them. Like I did in the thumbnail, I just used blue tack on the back of Vision in order to get him in his hand. It's not like a big fig where you could technically hold it, but it does sort of work like that. But in terms of other items for scale, first up we have this large pick-a-brick cup right next to him, and that doesn't even reach his shoulder. My Iron Spider Funko Pop, which I don't even think quite matches his hip. I've also got my Donald Duck brick heads, which again doesn't quite match his hip. The Great Hall build from the 2021 Chamber of Secrets set, which is the closest one so far, but still not quite as tall. This old Ninjago box. Even a Rubik's Cube. And lastly, this PlayStation 1 controller. As you can see, this thing is giant. I mean, hence the name, Giant Man. So that is Giant Man. If you want one of your own, I will leave his account linked in the description below. But do keep in mind, these things take a lot of time. I got extremely lucky considering this one was already pre-made. And I just think he's going to look incredible. The way I'm going to do it is probably put him next to my Avengers compound, have him fighting. I also really want to recreate the Civil War scene for this thumbnail. So I hope I did it well and I hope you guys like it. But for now, I feel like I'll just chuck him on my new Marvel shelf behind me next to the Sanctum or something. I love this and I really cannot wait to get Galactus. I really want to get him because I loved playing that Marvel Superheroes video game especially, and that's always what I think of when I think Galactus. And I feel like with these giant characters it makes sense. I feel like the best versions to get of these are either you have like a favorite character of all time, a favorite minifigure, Giant Man, Galactus, or like a version of yourself like I did. So like I said, I'll leave the account in the description down below if you want to check out any of his maxi figures. And if you guys enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel down below. And until next time, I'll see you later.